Welcome, everyone. It is Archie Hodges here, president of the Black Achievement Fund, and we are here today for another info session and educational class on a topic that has been with our leadership establishment since the end of enslavement. And that, of course, is segregation or integration. As you all know, two very famous African American leaders, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, they kicked off this debate in the late 1900s, early 20th century. And today we're still grappling with these same two ideologies. So we're going to explore both Booker T. Washington's ideology versus Du Bois' ideology, and then we're going to have a conversation as to who we think was right. Okay, so I look forward to that. But before we start, for those of you who are tuning in to learn more about the Black Achievement Fund, I'll give you a brief overview of our organization, and I invite you to go to our YouTube channel. I have dozens and dozens and dozens of info sessions all about every facet of the Black Achievement Fund. So feel free to go for more extensive information about what we do and who we are. But let's go first and give our quick elevator spiel. All right. For those of you just tuning in, the Black Achievement Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit economic and community development corporation with the mission of financing the grand development of Black America and beyond through a simple system of collective economics, or UJAMA. 10 million Black people and our allies plus $9 a month equals 90 million a month and over $1 billion a year. With this capital, we plan to rebuild new Black municipalities all across the country, new Black-owned institutions all across the country. And if you go throughout, you'll see some of the success we've had so far. We've already established our own Kemet Club. We collectively purchased 6 acres of land. We're working right now on a 112-acre residential retreat and glamping community in Toomsboro, Georgia, and so many other things. So if you have not joined the Black Achievement Fund, please go to baf.solutions and also to our YouTube page. Our current projects, programs are all listed on our homepage. And I also wanted to bring attention to our Labor Day campout, which is happening Saturday, August 30th, 6 p.m. to Sunday, 10 a.m. We're gonna have food, music, overnight, not overnight, but movie, outdoor movie, so on and so forth. So if you're in the Atlanta metro area, please come and hang out with us at our New Kemet Labor Day campout on August 30th. And you can buy, tickets are actually free for Black Achievement Fund members, as well as vending, all right? So if you want to vend some good food or whatever products you may sell, you can come out and sell those things free of charge, okay? Now, we're going to get right into our class because the documentary is pretty long. So I want to have enough time to be able to have a rich discussion afterwards. But let's start with an overview of the class. This is on Booker T. Washington, the Wizard of Tuskegee. At the bottom of education, at the bottom of politics, even at the bottom of religion, there must be for our race economic independence. Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, 1856 to 1915, was one of the most influential African American leaders of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a visionary educator, institution building, and master strategist in the fight for Black advancement. Born into slavery in Franklin County, Virginia, Washington rose to national prominence as the founder of Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, a vocational school that trained Black students in trades and practical skills as a pathway to economic independence and racial uplift. Washington's philosophy of self-help, economic empowerment, and racial accommodation was deeply influenced by Isaiah T. Montgomery and the success of Mount Bayou, Mississippi, an all-Black town built on principles of self-reliance and community pride. And we studied that last week, so you know all about Mr. Isaiah T. Montgomery. He viewed Mount Bayou as a living example of Black self-governance and enterprise, a real-world model of the ideals he preached. Washington publicly celebrated Montgomery's leadership and invited him to deliver the keynote address at the National Negro Business League, that's supposed to be convention, using Mount Bayou to inspire, a national movement of Black-owned businesses and independent Black communities. Can someone pick up reading there, please? Anyone want to read?
Sure. Where, sorry, I had some food in my mouth.
Though often remembered.
Though often remembered for his Atlanta Compromise speech, where he outwardly accepted segregation in exchange for economic opportunities for African Americans, Washington's strategy was far more complex. Behind the scenes, he secretly funded legal challenges against segregation and disenchantment, supporting court cases and civil rights efforts that worked quietly to dismantle Jim Crow laws. A brilliant political tactician, Washington was able to gain the trust and support of both white supremacists and white liberals, securing practical financial resources for Black schools, businesses, and institutions. His influence reached the highest level of power. He served as an advisor to several U.S. presidents, including Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, shaping national discussions on race relations and Black education from within the political establishment. Though his cautious public approach sparked criticism from more radical contemporaries like W.E.B. Du Bois, Washington's legacy as a pioneer of Black education, economic self-determination, and strategic activism continues to be recognized for its complexity, pragmatism, and enduring impact.
Thank you, Ms. Dr. Gloria. So Booker T. Washington is one of the most complex leaders we have ever had in African American history. They call this man the wizard because unlike any other leader before or since, he was able to get funding from white supremacists, the KKK, the citizens. Everyone wanted to throw him money, including the Northern liberals and industrialists. So on the face of everything, he advocated for let white people have their own towns, their own society, vote themselves into office. And in the meantime, we can build our own cities, build our own wealth, be self-governing like Mount Bayou. So that was his whole philosophy. But some people like DuBois felt that he went too far in accommodating to racism and segregation. So we're going to go right into our assignments. And this is from our new Breaking Barriers African American History curriculum, which should be done this week, and you guys will be able to access that. All right, so we're going to go right to our assignment number 2.
In 1872, a young man set out on foot on a 500-mile journey across the state of Virginia.
Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which he has overcome. This quote by the great Booker T. Washington perfectly sums up his own life.
He thought that it was best for African Americans to gain an industrial education and ideally translate that into land ownership, business ownership, and build up institutions of their own.
Join us as we dive into the life of one of the most impactful men in not only Black history, but American history. We will discover how someone born into the horrors of slavery ended up building universities, leading economic advancements, and embodied Black power before the phrase even existed. Click those join, like, and share buttons. Now, follow us to the farmlands of Virginia. Born a slave. April 5th, 1856. Booker T. Washington
Born
was born
enslaved.
on a plantation in Franklin County, Virginia. Washington was born to an enslaved mother, Jane, who worked as a cook. His father, a white man from a neighboring plantation, was absent and never involved in Booker's life. Even as a child, he was thrust into the backbreaking forced labor of slavery. Just like all the other children on the plantation, Booker learned how to perform menial tasks like carrying water to men in the fields, feeding livestock, and carrying laundry. He worked long hours through the grueling summers, and they didn't stop in the shivering winters. In his book, Up From Slavery, Washington details the frustrations of not being educated. Like most slaves, he was denied proper education, as it was mostly forbidden to educate slaves. Many owners believed an educated slave is an uncontrollable slave. As a child, he dreamed of being able to read and write. That frustration, along with having to sleep in cramped living conditions with his mother and other siblings, would be the catalyst that sparked his relentless pursuits later in life. The Civil War ended in 1865, when Washington was about 9 years old. He would recall a great sense of joy and fear as the Emancipation Proclamation was read, signaling the end of slavery. His family, like many enslaved, had known no other life than backbreaking work and life on a plantation. They had to learn what freedom really was. After the war, the Washingtons moved to Malden, West Virginia, where his stepfather found work. And even though they were no longer enslaved, they still lived in poverty, and racism still made things difficult for Black people. To help out, young Booker worked in the salt and coal mines alongside his stepfather. However, hope came in the form of school. Even though he was still involved in backbreaking labor, he was able to attend school in West Virginia. He would get up as early as 4 a.m. to finish his work duties before attending school. Booker T. Washington's commitment to education and philosophy of self-reliance were formed during these years. From janitor to university founder. Booker T. Washington would watch white children attend schools. He would watch white children leaving schoolhouses and yearn for an opportunity to learn. When his family moved to Malden, he found what he was looking for. A Black local teacher began offering evening classes for the formerly enslaved. Washington jumped at this opportunity with the support of his mother. His mother bought him a blue-blacked speller. A blue-blacked speller was first introduced in 1783 and used to teach children how to read and spell. It was something Frederick Douglass used during his self-educating process. Washington would read his blue-backed speller as often as he could, which included during breaks at work and throughout the night. After a few years, a proper school for Black children opened up nearby. This excited young Booker, but his stepfather resisted, claiming Booker needed to continue to help provide for the family. So in order to go to school, Booker T. Washington would wake up at 4 a.m., work the mines, then head to Tinkersville School. That desire to seek out education, no matter the cost, was undeniable. While working the mines, Washington overheard two men talking about college. Well, it wasn't a college yet. The two men were talking about a place where African Americans were taught practical skills like agriculture and industrial, as well as formal education. This place was called the Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute. Today, it's simply known as Hampton University. After hearing that conversation, at just the age of 16, Booker T. Washington set out on a 500-mile journey to Hampton, Virginia, determined to seek out more education. He arrived at the admissions office dirty and exhausted from his trek, and was almost immediately turned away. The head teacher told him if he wanted to be admitted, he must prove his worth to the institute. In order to prove it, he was handed a broom and tasked with cleaning every room. Washington cleaned every room so well and with great detail that he impressed the head teacher and was granted admission. From 1872 to 1875, He did work in the classrooms and earned his way by working as a janitor. Booker T. Washington found education heaven at the Institute. Not only did he develop his reading, writing, spelling, and math skills, but he developed tools in agriculture and mechanics. The Hampton Institute was founded by General Samuel Chapman Armstrong. General Armstrong's philosophy of combining traditional education with practical skills would be something Booker would incorporate into his own evolving philosophy. General Armstrong would become a great influence and inspired Booker's ideas about education and self-reliance. When he graduated in 1875, Washington would take the lessons he learned from General Armstrong and the Hampton Institute and bring those lessons back to the black folk of Malden, West Virginia. It was here that he began teaching his ideas of self-reliance, doing for self, and the value of education to the formerly enslaved. He would carry on his teachings, working at various schools until 1881. At just the age of 25, he was offered the head principal position of a newly founded school in Tuskegee, Alabama. This school would become the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, better known as Tuskegee University. Do you love this type of content? Consider clicking that join button and becoming an exclusive member. Your support can go a long way in helping us continue to empower future generations through education. Cast down your bucket. For the next 15 years, Washington laid down the groundwork that would cement his legacy and outline the game plan he would use to share his philosophies with the nation. Under Booker T. Washington's leadership, Tuskegee became a model for other schools and played a key role in the education of not only black people in the South, but for black institutions across the country. His learn by doing philosophy at Tuskegee led students to become builders of their dreams. Literally, because Tuskegee was brand new, incoming students had to build their classrooms, dormitories, and facilities. This set the foundation of being responsible for your own development, which led to the students at Tuskegee to become some of the most productive in the country. During this time, Washington himself developed new skills to serve his school, fundraising, and networking. To help with the expansion of Tuskegee, Washington formed relationships and gained the funding of American businessmen like Andrew Carnegie and Julius Rosenwald. Their financial support proved vital, and he was able to form relationships with these men that he would later use to help build other black institutions. Fun fact: between 1882 and 1893, he went on to be married 3 times. Washington married his first wife, Fanny, and together they had a daughter, Portia. Unfortunately, Fanny died just 2 years later. He would marry for a second time in 1885 to Olivia A. Davidson. She was a fellow educator and would be someone he leaned on as he grew the institution. Together, they had 2 sons, Booker Jr. and Ernest David. Tragically, she died too in 1889. Washington would marry his 3rd wife and life partner, Margaret James, in 1893. Education was not all Washington impacted. His philosophy of do for self meant economically as well, believing black should acquire vocational skills to achieve economic independence rather than pushing integration and civil rights. This was showcased in his most famous speech, the Atlanta Compromise. On September 18, 1895, Booker T. Washington took the stage at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia, in front of a packed audience of black and white people. Cast down your bucket where you are. He encouraged black Americans of the South to seek opportunities and improve their own conditions instead of migrating elsewhere in hopes of being treated fairly by white people. He implored them to develop their vocational skills and hire each other in order to build their way out of poverty and economic restraints. In all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in all things essential to mutual progress. With this quote, Washington reiterated the importance of fighting together, to coexist separately, and to try to integrate would not lead to the gains in respect and economic advancement black people were seeking. No race can prosper till it learns that there is as much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem. Washington continued to promote the importance of manual and industrial labor when it came to building a solid economic foundation. Skills that were already mastered by black people through centuries of forced labor. Washington encouraged black people to take pride in these skills and use them as a pathway to prosperity. The wisest among my race understand that the agitation of questions of social equality is the extremist folly. Booker T. Washington believed that there was no need to advocate for integration and to force white society to accept black people into their schools, neighborhoods, and businesses. He believed the immediate focus should be mostly on building up the black nation, separately and without needing acceptance or permission from white people. And this could only be achieved through hard work, developing their own industries and self-reliance. This method of separatism he advocated would require patience, but would prove to be beneficial as blacks continued to gain their footing after hundreds of years of slavery. The Atlanta Compromise speech catapulted Washington in the national spotlight. It was a polarizing address that was championed by many and challenged by just as much, and would set up a long-standing battle of philosophies with another one of the nation's black thought leaders, W.E.B. Du Bois. Washington versus Du Bois. Washington's speech at the convention in Atlanta garnered him both supporters and critics. He received praise from many black Americans, eager to do whatever was necessary to gain their independence. His speech also was well received by white leaders and philanthropists like Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, many of whom agreed that black people's destiny laid on their shoulders and was not the burden of the mainstream society. However, W.E.B. Du Bois was not one of those supporters. W.E.B. Du Bois believed that the pathway to economic empowerment and racial equality was through civil rights and integration. Washington and Du Bois wanted the same goal, but their philosophies stood diametrically opposed, which made sense because they themselves came from opposite ends of the black experience. Du Bois was born a free man in the North. Washington was born enslaved in the South. Du Bois grew up in a predominantly white town, with some of them as neighbors and classmates. Going to school was normal. Washington grew up only knowing white folk as enslavers and overseers. He didn't see a formal classroom until he was a teenager. Du Bois became the first black person to earn a PhD from Harvard and became an advocate for higher education and professional development. Washington and his students had to literally build Tuskegee University, which reinforced his philosophy of vocational training for economic advancement. Booker T. Washington believed it was up to black folks to self-educate and build up their own community without the help of white people. But Du Bois believed that it was up to white people to allow blacks to integrate their institutions, and that black people needed to fight for their civil rights through gaining political power. These two warring philosophies sent waves through the black men and women of America. Even though they never publicly debated, they sent various indirect shots at each other through their writings, speeches, and influences through leadership. The do for self and fight for civil rights ideologies of these two great men still echoed through the civil rights movement and was reincarnated through Malcolm X's by any means necessary approach versus Dr. King's fight for equality through nonviolence approach. But what they would both agree on, which should never be lost, is that Du Bois and Washington were always fighting for a way to bring black people out of economic slavery. Impact and beyond. Booker T. Washington continued to advocate for the economic advancement and continuing education of black people in America. Through his leadership at the Tuskegee Institute, he educated and helped provide vocational training for generations of black people that led to the rise of black communities in the South. He continued to focus directly on black-owned businesses through different initiatives, including investing in the creation of the National Negro Business League. The National Negro Business League directly affected economic empowerment, including becoming the driving force behind the expansion of the black middle class, and was touted as a catalyst for the development of what would become Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Beyond his impact in education and economics, Washington also served as a key political advisor to other African Americans and U.S. presidents. Booker T. Washington had a unique and influential relationship with several U.S. presidents during his lifetime. His ability to navigate political circles, especially during the era of segregation and Jim Crow laws, made him one of the most powerful black figures in American history. Washington's relationship with President Theodore Roosevelt was perhaps the most famous. In 1901, shortly after Roosevelt became president, he invited Washington to dine with him at the White House, making Washington the first African American to receive such an invitation. This event was highly controversial and sparked outrage in the South, as many whites saw the dinner as an affront to segregationist values. Washington became an unofficial advisor to Roosevelt on racial matters. Roosevelt frequently sought Washington's counsel on issues concerning the black community and political appointments involving African Americans. Washington helped secure federal positions for black Americans in the South and beyond, using his political influence to ensure their appointment to civil service jobs. His political ties continued through President Howard Taft, President William McKinley, and President Woodrow Wilson. While Booker T. Washington's relationships with U.S. presidents brought benefits to African Americans, they also drew criticism. Many black leaders, particularly DuBois, felt that Washington was too willing to compromise on issues like segregation and voting rights. They argued that his close relationships with white political leaders came at the cost of advocating for full civil rights for African Americans. But Booker T. Washington believed in the delaying of civil rights and instead continued to advocate for initiatives that led to self-sufficiency and independence, and was willing to gain allies to forward those ideals, no matter their race. The challenges that black people faced during Washington's time are not the same. However, they are still faced with questions of how to move forward, continue to integrate through civil rights in the form of DEI critical race theory and affirmative action. Or do we adopt the ways of Booker T. Washington and continue to move forward with self-education, building your own industries, and hiring each other without focusing on what someone else can give us? In the spirit of Mr. Washington, it is our belief to continue to fight in whatever way you deem the best. But whatever you do it with all your might.
DuBois is the most important African-American intellectual and civil rights activist in American history.
The cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. This quote from W.E.B. Du Bois perfectly sums up his views on how black people could rise after hundreds of years of enslavement.
Du Bois, one of the most extraordinary intellectuals that the United States has ever produced.
Join us as we discover how one of the original leaders in the fight for civil rights came to be. We will dive into how Du Bois' upbringing led him to become one of the most brilliant minds of his time, and how his battle with Booker T. Washington shaped Black America to this very day. As always, if you love Black history, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Born Free. February 23rd, 1868, W.E.B. Du Bois was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. His family situation was rare for African Americans of that time. Unlike many Black Americans in the late 19th century who were born into slavery or its immediate aftermath, his family had been free for several generations. His mother, Maria Sylvina Burkhart, was a member of one of the long-standing Black families of Great Barrington. His father, Alfred Du Bois, left the family when W.E.B. was young. Great Barrington was a predominantly white town with a small Black population. Massachusetts was a free slave state even before the Emancipation Proclamation, so even though racism and prejudice existed, it was much more subtle than the overt expressions more common in the southern states. Du Bois was an excellent student at an early age, often rising to the top of his class, even though he was typically the only Black child in class. His intellect was often rewarded and encouraged by the white teachers, who saw the potential in a young Du Bois to do great things. He excelled in reading, writing, and was an effective debater. Even though racism was not overt in Great Barrington, it still affected Du Bois. He experienced subtle forms of racism, like exclusion from social activities and the occasional hostility from his white peers. These interactions would leave scars that he would address later in life. However, his encounters with his fellow white townspeople was positive. Many of the townspeople believed in Du Bois' academic potential and even helped raise money to help fund his higher education, another rarity of that time. These mostly positive and supportive relationships would shape his views on race relations and civil rights later on. He would later recall recognizing the contrast of some but not all white people being racist, showcased the racial divide that needed to be addressed. This sowed the seeds that would lead to his lifelong battle to address racial inequality. Even though he was born free and experienced relatively supportive relationships with fellow white folk, he would soon find out that was a small sample size. From Jim Crow to Harvard. The racism in Great Barrington was subtle, but in Nashville, Tennessee, it was much more Jim Crow overt. In 1885, Du Bois went to attend Fisk University, a historically Black college located in Nashville. For the first time in his life, Du Bois saw separate but equal in effect. Up until then, Black and white water fountains, Bathrooms and classrooms were only something he read about in newspapers. Coincidentally, it was also the first time he had been immersed in a predominantly black community. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the only black kid in class. He was sitting next to children who had never experienced an integrated classroom, students who had never met a kind white person. Some of his classmates were children of slaves or had siblings who had been lynched. It was here at Fisk that DuBois began to understand more deeply the plight of African Americans. His time at Fisk exposed him to the brutality of Southern racism for the first time. The stark contrast between his relatively kind and supportive white community in Massachusetts and the vile, harsh treatment of blacks by Southern whites had a profound effect on him. His resolve to address these inequalities only grew as he would spend his summers teaching in rural Tennessee. It was here that he was exposed to the deep poverty and oppression Southern black families faced. Always the exceptional student, DuBois would graduate from Fisk in just 3 years. His brilliance would lead him to attend one of the most prestigious universities in the world, Harvard. Despite his exceptionalism, he was required to complete 2 years of preparatory coursework, as Harvard did not accept all his credits from Fisk. He steamrolled that challenge and received his undergraduate degree from Harvard, graduating cum laude. DuBois would continue on and receive his master's from Harvard in 1891. It was during this time he began to develop sociological perspectives, which were inspired by his intellectual curiosity. This natural curiosity led to him receiving a fellowship to study at the University of Berlin in Germany, which was a major center of intellectual thought at the time. DuBois' time in Europe was very transformative. Here, he experienced a degree of racial acceptance that was unseen in America. DuBois returned from his studies in Germany reinvigorated. Once back in America, he began to serve as a professor at Wilberforce University, while also working on his groundbreaking dissertation. The Suppression of the African Slave Trade to the United States of America, 1638 to 1870, was DuBois' pioneering work in the field of American history and made W.E.B. Du Bois the first African American to earn a Ph.D. from Harvard in 1895. These accomplishments, graduating from Fisk but experiencing Jim Crow, graduating from Harvard, expanding his outlook on race by studying in Germany, being a professor at another HBCU at Wilberforce, then gaining his Ph.D. from Harvard, created a double consciousness. An idea that Black Americans live with a dual identity, one as an American and the other as a Black person, constantly aware of how they are perceived by the dominant white society. He believed it was integral that white people could and should make space for the Black experience. This concept would be central to his seminal work and the base on which he defended so fiercely in the coming years. Do you love this type of content? Consider clicking that join button and becoming an exclusive member. Your support can go a long way in helping us continue to empower future generations through education. DuBois versus Washington. As masses of enslaved African Americans were freed in 1865, many wondered what was next. Most enslaved individuals had never known freedom and didn't know how to navigate the country as free people. As the 19th century was coming to a close, now the children of former slaves were faced with how to best go forward. A few prominent voices stepped up to offer guidance. One of those voices was W.E.B. Du Bois, with his idea that Black people needed to focus on gaining political rights and access to higher education. The other was Booker T. Washington, who believed that Black people needed to focus on economic self-sufficiency and vocational skills. Du Bois believed in civil rights now. Washington believed in delaying civil rights and believed Black people should only focus on Black people. Booker T. Washington, unlike Du Bois, was born into slavery. He and his family were emancipated after the Civil War. Washington did not grow up in an integrated community or experience the generosity or support of his white neighbors. Booker T. Washington was not praised in school because Washington was not allowed to attend any formal school until he was in his mid-teens. Booker T. Washington had to sneak to educate himself after working long days in a coal mine as a child. Washington had to be the janitor of the school to earn admission into college. Even when he became principal of Tuskegee University, he had to literally help build the facilities. Washington was a firm believer that Black people should build economic viability through learning skills that would help them become economically independent, and they should delay any movement towards seeking equality in politics and/or socially. Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois had two totally different experiences as Black men in America, and it showed in the philosophies they championed. Du Bois believed the best way through for Black people was through civil rights integration, and forcing white people to recognize their wrongs. DuBois believed this could be attained by black people seeking out higher education and receiving professional development. W.E.B. Du Bois not only disagreed with Booker T. Washington's philosophy, he believed his approach was downright irresponsible and dangerous. During this time, especially in the Jim Crow South, black people were disenfranchised, faced overt racism and segregation, as well as extreme levels of violence. Washington's philosophy required black people to essentially accept this abuse, at least temporarily, and instead focus on building up itself. Du Bois, however, believed the price of accommodation and gradualism was way too high, and that black people needed civil rights now. The Talented 10. One of Du Bois' key concepts was the idea of the talented 10th. Du Bois believed that the way for black folks to gain the respect of other races was to lean on the top 10% of the black population. This talented 10th would be the most educated among them and would develop the leadership skills necessary to lead the black race. Du Bois believed that the future of black America depended on the development of intellectual and political leaders who could fight for civil rights and challenge systemic racism. He elaborated on the idea of the talented 10th in his 1903 bestseller, The Souls of Black Folk. The Souls of Black Folk is considered one of the most important works in African American literature and a foundational text in the history of sociology. Du Bois combines autobiography, history, and sociological analysis to explore the black experience in America after the Civil War, during the rise of segregation and Jim Crow laws. His book addressed the foundation of his philosophies and why he disagreed with the philosophy of Booker T. Washington. The Souls of Black Folk explored several different concepts, including the concept of double consciousness. Du Bois describes it as the internal conflict experienced by African Americans who are forced to see themselves through the eyes of a racist society. The burden of being American and being black creates a conflict within black Americans. He describes it as, it is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One of the key essays of the book directly addresses Booker T. Washington and his accommodationist approach to racial progress. Du Bois argues that Washington's focus on vocational training and economic self-sufficiency in the face of literally being lynched and barred from societal participation was ill-advised. He believed asking black Americans to stop fighting for equality and civil rights in order to get ahead economically was dangerous. Du Bois lays out his approach with the talented 10th. He was a strong advocate for education. Du Bois stresses the importance of higher education and believed that it was a key component to black Americans taking their rightful place in society. Du Bois believed black Americans needed professional job training and to develop their intellectual skills to achieve true equality. And from that, Du Bois believed the top 10% of black intellectuals would lead the way in advocating for the rights of the entire black population. The Souls of Black Folk had an immediate and profound impact on the intellectual and political landscape of America. It challenged the dominant narrative of accommodation and gradualism proposed by Washington and inspired generations of black intellectuals, activists, and leaders. The book also had a significant influence on the development of Pan-Africanism and the Civil Rights era that will come 60 years after the book's publishing. Legacy. The opposing philosophies of Washington and Du Bois would continue. Their rivalry would go on to become a huge part of Du Bois' legacy. Large sects of black Americans became disenchanted with Washington's idea of just accepting disenfranchisement and segregation. This led to Du Bois becoming more politically active and people championing his feelings of equality now. This led to Du Bois founding the Niagara Movement in 1905. The Niagara Movement directly called for full civil rights, political representation, and an end to racial discrimination. The Niagara Movement directly led to the founding of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, aka the NAACP, in 1909. The NAACP became a major force in the fight for civil rights, advocating for legal challenges to segregation and disenfranchisement, and Du Bois served as the original chairman. Du Bois continued to evolve in his beliefs. He continued to grow frustrated with America's racial policies, which led him to becoming more radical in his thinking. He eventually shifted toward socialism and became more critical of capitalism, which he believed perpetuated racial and economic inequality. In 1961, Du Bois renounced his U.S. citizenship. He would go on to spend his final years in Ghana. He passed away on August 27, 1963. DuBois passed just a day before the historic March on Washington, a march and a movement he undoubtedly influenced.
Did Booker T. Washington really call for accepting segregation?
In a way, Booker T is saying we have to remember that our well-being relies on the goodwill of white people. And the best way to ensure our future is to make ourselves useful to white people rather than agitating for a partnership they clearly are not ready to give to us.
In his groundbreaking Atlanta Compromise speech, he laid out a controversial path for Black progress in America, one that would spark debate for generations. Let's explore and break down why this speech and Washington's philosophy continues to encourage debates and fuel movements more than 100 years after it was given. If you love Black history, make sure you subscribe, like, and share. The year was 1895. The United States of America was only 30 years into the Emancipation Proclamation that led to the freeing of Black slaves. Black families were free, but were struggling to find an identity as they grappled with centuries of being deprived of self-fulfillment and any pursuit of building an economic or educational base. Now, standing in front of a packed audience was a former slave who offered a solution. Booker T. Washington spoke at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia, not as an oppressed man, but as a man with a vision for his people to be as free as he was. Cast down your bucket where you are. After the emancipation of slaves, many Black Americans decided to leave the South where they once, even if unwillingly, called home. However, Booker T. Washington believed that was a mistake. Cast down your bucket where you are might be the most memorable quote from this historic speech. He himself was born enslaved on a plantation in Virginia and knew firsthand the horrors and oppressive nature of the South, even post-Civil War. However, he urged Black people to not abandon the lands they once tilled. Washington urged the audience made up of Black and white citizens to develop vocational training and economic self-reliance. Blacks should sharpen their skills and work with each other, and he urged white farmers in attendance to pay fair wages to local Black farmhands, for it was more beneficial than relying on foreign immigrants who were less skilled than a workforce that developed their skills through centuries of forced labor. In all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in all things essential to mutual progress. As a child, Booker T. Washington grew up working in coal and salt mines after being emancipated. He worked the mines with other poor...
I'm actually going to stop here because the video starts to get a little redundant. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to have a nice discussion about these two strategies. Now, as you all saw, Washington and DuBois are coming from two completely different worlds, literally. Washington saw the horrors of slavery. Growing up, he witnessed nothing essentially but mean white people his whole life. So he didn't have any real positive experience with white people and didn't necessarily himself even want to integrate into white circles. You know, if you think about it, what Black person in the South, after slavery was over, sincerely wanted to become a part of white society? Who do you think? In the South, not the North, in the South, having this history. So Washington is operating based upon his circumstances and based upon the circumstances of Blacks in the South. He speaks for them. He knows their world. The level of violence against Black people during this time was absolutely uncanny. Black historians refer to this moment in Black history as the nadir, meaning the worst epic in African American history, period. And the reason was that during enslavement, you couldn't just kill an enslaved Black because they had tremendous value. After enslavement was over and they no longer have any value to white people, the Black body became a subject of terrorism. I want to play this little clip that came up on Facebook really quickly, and then we're going to get into this conversation because I want you to see the level of violence that white people perpetuated against Black people. Hold on. Okay. Okay, why isn't this playing? Can I not play a reel through this? Well, anyhow, the video that I was just, not video, but the clip that I was just going to show you was white people talking about the terrorism that the white supremacists enacted on Black people after enslavement. After 1877, the federal government removed all of the military troops that were stationed throughout the South to protect the rights of newly freed African Americans. And once the military was gone, all hell broke loose. This is when you get a lynching practically every single day throughout the South for 2 decades. For 2 decades. So their whole strategy was to host a litany of terror campaigns all across the South, murdering, killing, cheating elections, doing everything that they could to get back in power in the South. So that is the context to which Booker T. Washington is operating from. The South had regained their power after the federal government began to change its course on its championing the African American. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now, do we have any comments? What do you all think? Segregation, integration. Based on what you saw, anybody?
Yeah, I would like to speak,
Okay.
if I may. So one of the things that caught my attention was how they both really are kind of mixed, in their makeup, in their genetic makeup. And I wonder if that has anything to also do with how Booker T. Washington was able to also get that trusting from the non-melanated Southerners and non-melanated Northerners, because he was half non-melanated.
No.
So
Yeah, unfortunately, you had so many Black people who were of mixed lineage. So that was a commonplace during enslavement. And it's something that we all know, that Black women were raped repeatedly during enslavement. And this was something that was commonly known, so much so that legislation was passed to prevent it. And the legislation that was passed to prevent it was one that said that the status of the mother is going to be the status of the child. So that if any white man went and had a baby with a Black woman, that baby was going to be enslaved. So they put that measure in to prevent this race mixing, but you couldn't stop it. Booker T. Washington was actually darker than a lot of mulatto people of his time, as you can see through a lot of his pictures, whereas DuBois was a lot lighter. But interestingly enough, even DuBois, his father, wasn't all white. But I wouldn't necessarily say that that Booker T. Washington's dad being white or his skin complexion made him favorable. What made him favorable was the fact that he was speaking out the side of his mouth. He was saying something that he knew related to both white supremacists and the white Northerners. The white Northerners, they wanted a solution to the race problem. And here's a Black man who is presenting a solution that is acceptable to the white South. So because he's presenting that, they're supporting him, because they're saying, finally, we have a way in which we can move forward. And it is through Booker T. Washington. He's saying that he's willing to accept segregation if black people are allowed to develop their own cities and towns, be self-governing, and take care of themselves. That's what Washington saw, and that's why you had both white supremacists and industrialists supporting him.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other comments? But what do you think about the two strategies?
Personally, I side with Booker T. Washington because his was about self-sustainability in all areas, as far as life skills, vocational skills, educational skills. I am with him because I believe in that own resiliency and reliance of our own.
Okay.
Versus W.E.B. Du Bois, the integration, that it doesn't benefit us to integrate with them because then they take more from us than we are giving to our own.
That's a great point. Thank you for that. One of the
Thank you.
things that I will follow up with you on is the fact that in time, the Booker T. Washington strategy began to show that it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, in the sense that white people were not going to allow black people to create these,
No matter what.
no matter what. That Booker T. Washington and Isaiah T. Montgomery, these towns that they built, okay? So what ends up happening is that white people are double talking too. They're telling Booker T. Washington's double talking them, and they're double talking Booker T. Washington. They're saying, yeah. If you guys commit to segregation and abandoning civil rights and trying to integrate into our community, we allow you guys to create your own towns, be self-governing, and all of those things. And they did. But the problem is when they did it too successfully. When they did it too successfully and began to outshine the white communities, the prosperous white communities. And that is when you see the burning of Tulsa, Rosewood. So although it sounded like a fair deal, we have to understand that you can't trust white people. You couldn't trust, well, you couldn't trust, nothing couldn't trust the white supremacists, I would say, okay? You couldn't trust them. And he shook hands with the devil, expecting the devil to honor his handshake. And that was the folly. Du Bois' strategy proved essential because what ended up happening is that because Isaiah T. Montgomery first in 1890, let's look at the dates. In 1890, remember, Isaiah T. Montgomery is the only black person invited to the Mississippi Constitutional Convention, in which he essentially said that black people, the whole Booker T. Washington, we're willing to remove ourselves from voting and all of that integration for economic benefit, okay? And that's what got Isaiah T. Montgomery in hot water. 5 years later, Booker T. Washington is parroting the exact same ideology. Remember, his Atlanta Compromise was 1895. What happens in 1896? What happens in 1896? Huge Supreme Court decision.
Dred Scott?
Plessy versus Ferguson.
Ferguson. Plessy versus.
This is when you get legalized segregation. Okay? Now, with legalized segregation came the separate but equal water fountains, public facilities, and we all know that nothing was equal.
No.
Once again, even though white people were outwardly saying that, hey, if you guys agree to this, we'll agree to this that will help you. But then they flipped the whole script. And this is why people felt that Du Bois had accommodated too much and that he had struck a deal with the devil, and the devil had no intention on upholding their end of the bargain, meaning allowing black people to develop on their own, okay? One of the things that you're gonna see when you guys study the Breaking Barriers curriculum is that one of the main causes of lynching was economic. One of the most famous lynching cases was one of Thomas Moss, which was Ida B. Wells and Mary Church Terrell's close friend. He was a very prosperous business owner, and because he was so prosperous, he put all the white people out of business. And what do you think they did? They went and lynched him. So they were showing black people that we are not going to allow you to rise but so high.
That's right.
I don't care what anybody says.
Mm-hmm.
We are not going to allow you to eclipse white people in any arena. I don't care who's in charge, who's saying what. We will come and burn this down block to block. And that is why in 2025, black people are scared to do the same things over again. I asked myself over and over again, I said, well, Archie, you had all of these prosperous black towns that everybody talk about, self-sustaining, the dollar circulated 14, 15, 16 times. They had their own schools, their own churches, their own hospitals, their own businesses, their own movie theaters. So if they had all of these things, and these communities were so great, why is it that we are afraid to create our own self-governing municipalities in 2025? How is it that 100% of African-American leadership is either political or religious?
Can I say something right quick?
You sure can.
Just to kind of, I just want to kind of give you an idea of what I'm going through right now. It's kind of,
Who do we have speaking?
this is Glenn Johnson from
Okay,
Politics.
floor.
Huh?
You have the floor.
Okay. I'm going to give you a scenario of what's going on in my life right now that's kind of related to this. And I just spoke to my brother, my blood brother, just the other day. We are both trying to work on getting benefits for our disabled benefits, right? Okay, I've worked on a job for 38 years, and I've acquired some property, rental property, you know, and all. And now I'm retired, and that rental property is taking care of me, right? Okay, I've applied for military benefits 2 or 3 times. Never got a thing. I have a brother, he's been I call it chronically unemployed. And he has been able to get a lump sum of money at least 3 times in the last 5 years. So I made the statement that white America, they know just about everything about you, you know, what you own, you know, and all this stuff. They know all of that stuff. So they would be more apt to giving a person like my brother lump sums of money because they know he's not going to do anything with it but just blow it off. And opposed to, and I made this statement to him, I said, since I'm retired, I said, if I was to get a lump sum of money, the first thing I would do is buy me an RV, you know? They do not want any black man that's going to take that money and be prosperous with it. And I also made the statement, you know, if I was to get a lump sum of money, the first thing I would do is try to, you know, the project that you all have going on over there in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I have said that that's one of the things I wanted to do, invest some money in that property, you know, because my daughter lives in Marietta, Georgia. And I mean, that would be just the thing for me. And they know my history. They know my financial history, my economic history, what I've done with the money that I've made. You know, they will not let me have it.
You bring an excellent point, and it's all the way to 2025. If you look at any super successful black person, they try to tear them down. If you look, I mean, look at the Diddy case.
You just try, I mean, you ain't got to be super successful. If they think that you're going to benefit help some other black person or other black group be successful, You're not getting that money. You're
I mean,
not
that's
going.
what happened also with us trying to finance our new Kemet development. I
Yeah,
had to have someone sit me down and reshape my whole strategy of going into the banks. Okay.
yeah.
You can't just go into the bank in the South as a black person and say you
Nope,
own 100 something acres of land and
nope,
come here to get financing to build 50 houses and so on and so forth. There's no way.
nope.
There is no way. They want to showcase black ingenuity, black talent, black success, none of that. Because if they do, what is that going to say about racism? What is that going to say about this whole inferiority, superiority? How are you going to show that you're superior when everyone can see that the communities that black people have created are way better than all of your communities?
Exactly.
How, how,
Yep.
how can you now hold on to this superior position? Okay, so this has been a critical aspect of Black liberation here in America. And it is about us being too prosperous, us being too prosperous. Even I argue that even the most liberal white person, they'll remain liberal until they see black people having too much.
Doing better than no. You ain't got to have too much. You just got to have. You got to have $2 more than them. That's it. That's it. But listen, I'm glad I got you, man, because I will tell you this. I'm in the process right now of trying to sell property here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's one of the first things I'm going to do is look y'all up. I'm already a member of the Black Achievement Fund, but I'm looking forward to once I sell this property. Uh, Here I come, Georgia. I'm letting you know.
All right.
I'm coming that way, brother.
Well, we
I
got to.
got to tell him one more thing there too, that he's got to do. I don't mean for this to sound bad, but you cannot tell your plan. You
Yes,
just
ma'am. Yes,
cannot
ma'am.
tell
Yes,
your
ma'am.
plan. Not
I got
even, and look, sometimes we talking best friend and they get to asking you too many questions. You
you got
start
me under
talking off
arrest.
the wall and talk
You
about
got me
anything,
under
but
arrest.
don't
I had
tell
that
them
problem.
your plan. Then
You
they
got
don't
me
have
under
to
arrest.
fight. They just go in there and stop it.
Yep.
You got me under
I
arrest,
mean,
sister.
you're absolutely right. And to a testimony to that is that a banker told me, take down all your YouTube. You're employed by the Black Achievement Fund. So when they run that, when they say, okay, this is your employer, and they Google Black Achievement Fund, they're not going to finance you. That's not going to happen. It took me almost 2 years to get a bank to finance this project. And we had to do, just like you said, Dr. Gloria, we couldn't disclose virtually anything at
And you
all.
got to have people around you who understand that, you know.
I'm going to tell you
No,
one other thing. The person who helped break through was a white woman.
I believe it.
She sat me down and gave me the real deal and gave me a path forward. And I shared this to say that even though you all know that I'm a Pan-Africanist and I'm 100% black, I mean it when I say and our allies, and our allies.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
we have allies that are very broad. And all throughout enslavement, after enslavement, we have had white people champion black rights, help black people along, even Booker T. Washington. What wasn't shown was that he got a lot of his white friends to buy land in Harlem, to buy land in Chicago, to go to Paraguay to research to buy land there, so that and then had those white people sell it to black people. And that's one of the ways in which Harlem got gentrified by black people. And a lot of people don't even know that. Almost
Yep.
100% of Harlem was owned by Jews that would not sell to black people. They would just offer rents. That was,
Mhm.
and through the National Negro Business League and through his relationships with white people, this man, Booker T. Washington, was underhandedly trying to support all of the things that he was outwardly saying that he was against. The same with Isaiah T. Montgomery. He went to that constitutional convention and said we didn't want no voting rights. But yet he operated a town in which the town voted. You know what I mean? So, these guys are trying to double talk, but the white people are also double talking. And that is
Oh,
why
yeah.
we had to rely on both. And I framed this way because this is how it's always framed, either this or that. When you
Right.
make a dichotomy like that, what escapes is that neither, nor, or both could be the answer. And in this case, I'm saying that both men were right and both men were necessary and both men were supposed to have been operating to the fullest extent, realizing their individual ideologies.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Both
That's
were
true.
right. Both were right.
Yeah.
We should be building our own communities, being self-sustaining, self-governing, but we should also be fighting for our full citizenship rights. We should also be demanding that we have access to the ballot just as the Constitution gave it to us. It shouldn't be an either or. Even
we gotta-
right now today, why does it have to be an either or? In America, right now, we're an integrated society. But residentially, what are we? Every racial group has self-segregated in America,
Yeah.
even though America's integrated. So I argue with you all that they both were right. And that,
Yeah, imagine if they came together.
yeah, well, they
I
couldn't.
mean,
They couldn't. They
No,
couldn't. You know what I mean? So they were
I-
more powerful
Mm-mm.
operating the
Gotta
way
keep
they did. You know
quiet.
what I'm saying? Let me give you an example.
Not in that
Silence
day.
is golden.
Not back in that day, they couldn't.
No, absolutely not. If
Not
he
in that
could've- yeah, he couldn't. But it worked out to our advantage because we were working on both ends.
Yeah.
We had leadership on both ends.
And we got enough knowledgeable black folks now that we can work it from both ends now. Back then, we didn't.
Exactly. And now I argue we don't have leadership on both ends. Now our leadership is almost exclusive integrationists.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have national leaders that are advocating for a return to Black self-sufficiency, Black self-governance, starting our own municipalities over again. That voice is gone. That voice is gone. So
Yeah, but
because that voice is gone,
we have the knowledge and the information that we don't, I mean, we can do it.
Mhm.
We have the knowledge and the information now that we can do it without them.
no doubt.
We
And we're
got
doing it. We have someone who has their hand up, iPhone SE.
Uh-huh.
That's me, Sister Harriet.
Oh.
I don't know if you can see me or not.
No, you have your camera off. Oh, it's on. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Let me just-
yeah, it's on.
Can you
I
see
see
me?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
I didn't put my name in there.
Okay.
Anyway, I wanted to add one comment to the story. I don't know if you know it or not. In the book, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, where she talks about the Great Migration, right? From that so many blacks during the early 1900s all the way up to 1970 migrated to the north in order to, have more economic
West.
opportunity.
And
I'm sorry.
the West and the West as well.
Right. Anyway, she tells the story about how the black elite back in this was about 1950. The black elite here in Atlanta had become so affluent that they no longer wanted DuBois to be one of the professors in the Atlanta University Center. I don't know if you've ever heard this story or not.
I didn't
But
know.
they actually lowered the retirement age for professors so that they could get him out.
Wow.
Yeah, so he ended up moving to New York, and then he ended up moving to Ghana, before he passed away. But the black elite felt like they had arrived.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Du Bois, again, he'd become a socialist and a communist, all of those things. So, black people, we still are afraid of the word socialism and,
Right.
communism and that sort of thing. So imagine during the height of the Red Scare and all of those things, you have such a prominent black person advocating for socialism and communism. The black middle class and the elite have always been conservative, okay? The
Yeah.
more money you got, the more conservative your attitude tends to be.
Right. So they got him out.
Yeah, so so they got him out.
Isn't that pitiful?
It is, you know, and to his credit, in I believe it was 1930, he did an about face on his position against Booker T. Washington. And he did an article in the Crisis called The Conservation of the Races, okay? If you guys want to check that out, it's called The Conservation of the Races. You can Google it and find it. But he essentially espoused Booker T. Washington's whole entire ideology in 1930. Because he had begun to see through the Red Summer of 1919, that through all of the collusion with state and local governments to repress the black vote and all of these things, he began to understand that it was an overwhelming force that was preventing black people from full citizenship into the American body politic. And because of that, if I'm exclusively saying that this is the path forward and we're not getting any results, and it's seeming more dire and dire as we move forward, then maybe I need to reconsider a different strategy. Maybe I need to revisit Booker T. Washington. Maybe he was right all along. You know, so to his credit, he was able to come full circle and say, you know what, this man wasn't crazy. Okay, there was
Don't you think that's the way it is now too? Don't you think that is really what's going on now?
Expand.
They are still lying to us, because you think about when it's time to vote. Okay, we got some people that's going over to the other side, knowing full well that that is not going to help all the people. So I guess they're scared. I mean, maybe they've done something wrong, or they're making some money on the side, or whatever. But I see it as, you can't really trust anybody right now. You
Can I
can't
say,
trust anybody.
can I say this, Dr. Gloria? And I mean, I want to tell you, I'm an ordained minister, and I got saved early in life, and I was really into the church. I mean, most of my adult life, got my kids, my foster kids, all of them involved in church. But since I've been listening to Dr. Ray Hagan, and I'm beginning to realize the truth, I'm beginning to realize I really believe one of our major problems today is the black church and our ministers. And until they come to the realization that white America is using Christianity to keep us, they're using Christianity to keep us in our position, under their wings. And until these mainstream ministers, pastors, come to that realization, because right here in this area where I am, let's just say the population is, let's just say it's 200,000 people. And in a 2-mile radius of some of my property, I can actually stand on a corner and listen to 4 different black church services.
Oh, wow.
It's 23 churches in a 2-mile radius. And that's why I gotta come. Hey, brother, our kids sound funny, but that's one of the main reasons why I got to leave. I got to leave here. I have outgrown this area. And I mean, I'm 63 years old, man, but I still got a lot of life to live, you know, and I don't want to go down. I don't want to go down doing nothing. I'm retired, but I ain't ready to retire.
I know
So,
that's
I
right.
mean, I'm just saying, just this area where I am, we are so divided. I go to church a lot. I've been going to church, some of the churches that I've been going through for years. I just go just to see how people, if they still think the way they've been thinking, and they do. And until mainstream pastors in these areas realize They're teaching a lie. And I'm gonna tell you, I love Dr. Ray Hagan. Every time I listen to him, I cry.
You
But
know,
How
that's
about the
all about
fact about the money too? Remember,
it's all
was it
about the
about
money.
10
That's what.
years
Yeah.
ago that they started giving all this big money to the black churches? And they going up there buying $1 million church and all that, and they buying 2 and 3 airplanes. And the liquor stores are right there in their community. So that should have said, wait a minute, something's not right.
So they get out of
Now
Sunday.
they
They
can't
get out of
pay
Sunday
for it.
school. They get out of
So
Sunday
that's
school,
why it's
go out the
gonna
back
go. It's
door,
got to
and go
fall.
to the liquor store.
That's right.
one of the
That's
issues
right.
that we have is that our leadership is all non-economic, all non-business people. So if you look at the leadership, the politicians, most politicians are not business people, they're not entrepreneurs. They didn't come up at all, so they don't know anything about making money, developing the community, anything like that. The religious figures, they studied religion their whole entire career. They studied nothing about business. They're not business people. So when it comes to this leadership now, our politicians and the churches, the leaders are all non-economic. So who is there to chart a course for the economic development of Black America? What part of the leadership establishment is doing that? And that is the critical part that is missing. So what we're doing with the Black Achievement Fund is we're saying that we are filling that void. Okay, we're going to serve as the Pan-Africanist leadership establishment that is focused on the capabilities of developing our own self-sustaining communities again. But if
Well,
you,
I'm gonna sell a piece of property so I can move to Georgia. And once we get established in Georgia, I'll keep one piece so we can come back and do it here.
that's
How
right.
that sound?
Once again,
How
like
that
we
sound?
want to do this everywhere. Just imagine this vision. Just look at this vision.
Trouble connecting to the internet.
Look at this vision.
It looks like an issue with the
Black
router
people
device.
through an organization like the Black Achievement Fund.
Unplug both of them.
Guys, can someone mute,
Unplug the
please?
back end. Wait
Uh,
30 seconds.
Through, let's say, for instance, through what we're doing right now, we establish our own city here in Georgia, world-class city. Fresh food, no crime, we're policing ourselves, we operate our own hospitals, our own business district, our own museums, and the community is better than all of the surrounding communities. And then we take this know-how and this wealth, and we do it in Texas, and we do it in California, and we do it in New York, and we do it in Colorado, and we do the same things all across the country. What do you think would happen? And in these municipalities, we also have our own airports and things like that. We literally can establish a footprint in the United States of America to where we don't ever have to be on any white property ever in America while we're still thoroughly integrated in America. We're not saying that we're a separatist organization at all. But what we're saying is that we have the ability and the power to build our own separate communities, just like the Asians. The Asians are not integrated. When you turn your TV on, how often do you see an Asian American on the news, on a reality show, on a TV show, or anything?
Don't.
You don't. You turn your radio on. How often do you hear an Asian singer, pop singer, any type of music at all? No record label signing no Asian person. Okay, they don't care. When you go to your TGI Fridays, your Applebee's, your Buffalo Wild Wings, do you see any Asians? Not at all. Not at all. When you go pick your children, your grandchildren up to school, do you see any Asians? Not at all. Where are they? Where do they live? They have their own communities. And like you said, Miss Gloria, they keep their mouth shut. They keep their head down, their mouth shut, and they just building and building and building. And I challenge all of you, if you go right now and look at the last census, Asian Americans are the most successful racial group in the United States of America over white people. people. Asian Americans have the highest median income in America. And not just by a little bit, by over $20,000 a household.
Yeah.
Asian Americans have the highest level of educational attainment, more college degrees in Asian Americans than any other racial group, including whites. Asian Americans have the lowest number of people incarcerated in America over whites, fewer than whites. Asian Americans have the highest SAT scores and the highest GPAs in the United States of America.
Because they can relate to white
Africa's
before we
doing
can.
it too. Africa, all them countries coming together.
They can relate. Asians can relate to being white better than we can.
I don't
I
necessarily.
mean, I'm talking about physically.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Physically. You know what I mean? You see some Asians, you might think they might be white, and they'll give it to them. They will help them before they help us.
Of course, they will help anyone before they help us. Anybody, because we're supposed to be permanently at the bottom. Okay, permanently at the bottom.
That's what they say.
Thing about us.
That's what they've been teaching.
Yep. The thing about us, and I really hope that you all go through this new curriculum that I just developed, the Breaking Barriers series, because what you're going to see is an extraordinary history of African American courage, genius. I mean, right after enslavement, we were congressmen, we were senators. Okay, I was just reading about Mary Church Terrell, and here her father's a millionaire. We're talking 1890s. She went to Oberlin College. Okay, the Jones family, 5 daughters, all went to Oberlin College. One of the daughters, an MD, started at Spelman Medical School. But Robert Smalls stole a Confederate ship, took the reward money, and purchased the house that he was enslaved in, and became the first congressman in South Carolina. So what you see is an amazing, astounding show of Black progress immediately following the Civil War. And it was so fast, it was so just in your face that white people couldn't believe it, okay? Here during enslavement, you had all of these enslaved Africans feigning they don't know how to read. No, sir, but sir. And then right after enslavement, they're in Congress speaking eloquently. And these people are like, what in the world? Their world essentially was flipped upside down.
And we just knew our word. With even the medical people, I might not can call the names of these things, but the medical people were saying it. And they had all these things set up. Yeah, at first they were saying Japan. The Japanese were so smart. And then they started throwing them in with the Chinese. I'll never forget engineering over there at Norfolk State. And they were prepared. They thought that they were smart. And then they started letting us in, getting in, working with us, finding out. Well, no, we actually are smarter. We are smarter. Everything came from this. Everything.
We're the blueprint. No one can doubt that. We're the blueprint. And that blood.
But we don't know it. The bulk of us don't know it. We got to know who we are so we act like we know. You know what I'm saying?
The problem is that we don't control our education. I'm right here in the South. I was talking to Sister Shonda about her education. She's on this right now, about her education growing up here in the South. And I asked her, did you know anything about Ida B. Wells? And she said, yeah, I know about Ida B. Wells. I said, what did you know about her? And she said, yeah, she was a part of the women's suffrage movement. And I'm like, and what else? And she's like, that's it. And I'm like, Sister Shonda, Ida B. Wells is most famous for being an anti-lynching crusader. This is an African-American woman who by herself went all throughout the South and investigated lynchings and wrote about them and wrote what the real cause was to it. But once again, here in the South, she wasn't taught anything like that. I asked other, I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but I asked other people here, I said, What about the Eyes on the Prize documentary series on the civil rights movement? Nobody,
It's not
ever,
taught in the South. How did
nobody
you
have
get it?
ever
Because you were
spoke
born in the
to.
South.
I
How
got
you get
I
it?
got it. I got it from church. The knowledge that I have, I got it from church, and that's well, I can speak for right here where I am. That's why some of the mega white churches in this area started financing the black churches so they can dictate to them what they could teach and what they could not teach.
Yeah.
And see, right
Okay.
now here in my area,
Know about
it's
that.
just most of these churches in this area is financed by we got at least two mega churches, white churches, and they are financing the black churches. And and each black church, they trying to outdo the other. I mean, just 100 yards away, you got another church, and they compete with each other on who got the best parking lot or the best yard or the biggest steeple.
And they
And
control the
that's
voting.
where we are. I can say that here in this area because I mean I'm looking at it every day. How every Sunday morning is the most segregated time of the week. Not even do you have not only do you have neighbors going to different churches, you got husband going to one church, wife going to another church, and the kids is being picked up by a bus and taking them to a church in another city. That's how segregated we are.
Well,
That
Sister Harriet,
started in the 80s and it's still going on right now.
yeah, we have to do something.
Yeah.
Sister Harriet, you got your
Well,
hand up.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Once again, we have to remember now, this has never been a level playing field from the beginning. Asian people came here voluntarily. We did not. All these other races who stick together came here voluntarily.
But I want to say
We did
this,
not.
but I
No,
will tell you this.
let me just finish,
Okay,
okay?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I recently finished also a book called The Hidden History of the American Healthcare System. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not,
No,
but it disclosed why we don't have universal health care, or why we didn't have universal health care until Obama enacted the Affordable Care Act. Do you know why?
why is that?
Because after the Reconstruction, or during the period of Reconstruction, the U.S. government actually considered doing universal health care for everyone. The Prudential Insurance Company was one of the companies early on that was saying it's it's more economical and cost efficient to actually give people universal health care, because if you can keep your workers healthy, you can give them preventive and sick and accident care. You keep them working longer. You'll maintain them on the job longer. And they realized that countries like Germany and France, who had given all of their people universal health care, had it was a win-win for both the government and the people. Okay, if people had sick leave and all of that, it was a win-win for everyone. So the U.S. decided, with the Prudential Insurance and one other one I forget now, that they were going to. But then came the question of what to do with these pesky Negroes. Many of the enslaved people were already in poor health, and they realized that in order to be able to insure and give them health care, it was going to cost more, because many of them, because of their so many years of being enslaved, were in poor health. Okay, so they decided, well, let's just wait for another 2 or 3 decades, and all of them will be dead by then.
Wow.
Pretty much the bulk of them will be dead. Then we'll give the people everybody in the U.S. universal health care.
Wow.
So we're waiting for us to die off.
I
And then
wanna,
and so that question, that can got kicked on down the road from from different presidents who looked at it again. Woodrow Wilson, of course, being the big racist that he was, automatically said no. Roosevelt, though, looked at it and said, that's not a bad idea, let's do it. But it always got voted out by the government. It always got voted down. So consequently, we never got any kind of anything that even looked like universal health care until President Obama came in and enacted the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
So we have to realize
Even
we have had a
even that is
strike.
being dismantled.
Huh?
And even that is being dismantled.
Right. So
Yeah.
we've had, and look at all the other industrialized nations that give their people universal health care. And they realize how important it is that for people to have it. But the US never has because they have never wanted to insure Black people.
Okay. You're absolutely right. But I want to go back to your comment about the immigrants. The history of immigration, and I actually taught this at John Jay. The history of immigration in America is this. The first immigrant group after African Americans, we weren't immigrants, we came enslaved, but the first immigrants that came were the Chinese. The Chinese were lured here during the 1840s to the 1860s to build the Transcontinental Railroad. And they were being imported over here because the railroad tycoons refused to negotiate better salaries, better working conditions for white people. So instead of hiring Black people, which would have been uproarious, they went and they recruited the Chinese. The Chinese were the first Asian group to come to the United States as immigrants before anybody else. They worked on that railroad for 20 years. In 1880, the railroad was complete. And in 1882, Congress came up with the Chinese Exclusion Act, which excluded Chinese people from being US citizens and from being able to come to the United States at all, period, for decades. So the Chinese know their history, unlike us. They know their relationship to the United States of America. And over 20,000 Chinese people died constructing that railroad. The Japanese are second, okay? The Japanese was the second wave of immigrants that came to the United States. There is a famous case, and you can find the case right here in this documentary called The Rise and Fall of Jim Crow. And one of the things that they talk about is how the Japanese lost all their land in America. There was a Japanese guy by the name of Takawa, I think I'm mispronouncing it, but it's like Takawa or something like that. So anyway, he was trying to buy land in a white-only community. His skin was as white as any other white person, just like someone else mentioned. So he was told by the developer that he wasn't white and therefore he couldn't buy. So he took it to court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the all-white Supreme Court male judges said, we decide what's white. And although your skin may be as fair as any other white man, by physical looks, you are not white. And that the Japanese as a whole are not to be classified as white. And when that decision went down, guess what happened, Sister Harriet? They confiscated all the land that was owned by Japanese people and resold it to white people. And then during the World War II, they didn't forget that. This is one of the reasons they attacked America during World War II, okay? And in turn, the Japanese after World War II. So these immigrants that we speak of, they were not embraced and accepted into the American body politic. Even in 2025, they're not integrated nowhere near white people. They don't even come around white people. And I say that that is the difference, you know, and I'm not saying that to say that the reason why they got all of these things, well, I'm trying to refute that the reason why they have all of this success is because white people help them and because white people are willing to do. White people don't like them in the same way that white people don't like us. If you're watching what's going on with Harvard, Stanford, and the Ivy Leagues right now, Asian Americans are suing all of these universities for discrimination because they have the highest GPAs and the highest SAT scores, but every single year it's only 20% Asian, 20% Asian, 20% Asian. So they're saying, hold on, we way smarter than all these white people that you're admitting. But we got higher GPAs, all of these standards that you put in place. We've exceeded them, and now you're coming up with another reason not to admit us. Or you're holding us to a certain percent because the idea is, what if Harvard admitted 50% Asian? Its prestige would go down the toilet. If Yale had a student body of 50% Asian, do you think Yale will be still considered one of the top colleges? No. These are institutions of white supremacy. And they're telling Asian people, listen, we ain't gonna give you these prestigious degrees for you to go build your own company, send the money back to Asia, don't put any money back into the American economy, because they're not. They're not. You know what I mean? If you look at Wall Street, okay, you look at retirements, I challenge any of you, do your research. Asian Americans don't have their money in no damn stock market. Asian Americans don't have their money in no 401k. Asian Americans don't have their money in no IRA. We are the only ones in 2025 still, you say you don't like capitalism, you say they're exploitative, you say all of these things, but they control all your damn money, all your retirement money. You got them managing all your retirement money. This is, we're not thinking deep enough. You understand? There is no simple answers. This is deep, 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 and once I started doing all of this research and really seeing it, it's a divide and conquer situation that they've never, ever, ever strayed away from, because it still works. Because it still works.
Just between me and you, Doctor.
Those
Just between
people.
you and I, my money, I drew my money out of my 401k and put it in the closet. That's just between me. It sounds funny.
Don't tell nobody this, okay? I don't want nobody coming to your house tonight.
Brother, I prefer you to put it in real.
It's like Dr. Hagen says, though.
I don't even keep over $500 in the bank anymore. If I look in there and I see over $500, draw it out.
It's like Dr. Hagen says, though, that band that's around the money, that's kind of like an iridescent band, can be seen from satellite out of space. Okay, so they still know where your money is when you.
They really do. It's terrible.
And what we have to keep in mind too, though, Brother Archie, is those people were not brought here in chains against their will. Okay, those people did not have their memory erased.
No.
And given an ideology that their ancestors wouldn't have even spent any time accepting. Period. Right. We've accepted these religions and everything else and without question, because we did not know, because our own consciousness was wiped out as African people. So we were a clean slate for them to program whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And religion, Christianity specifically, is one of the ones that we, like Dr. Higgins talked about, we adopted that as a strategy to cope with a dire circumstance. But afterwards, it became a lifestyle. We adopted.
And don't forget they threw that alcohol in.
It's become a lifestyle that
that's what did it. The alcohol and drugs that took us all the way over.
We don't know who we were.
That's right.
I agree with you 100% on that one.
So they can give us, they can talk us into anything.
Yeah.
That's why I need to come to Georgia. See, I need to come to Georgia. That's why I'm hey.
Well, you better do some research.
Sister Gloria, I understand what you meant by everybody. I've said more today than I said to anybody. I'm keeping it to myself. So I stand.
Hey, no, AI got you.
Don't even tell your mama if she's living.
AI already got you.
Don't tell nobody.
The only reason why I told my daughter was because I needed a place to stay when I come. That's the only reason why I told her.
Yeah.
But I'm keeping it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So if y'all don't hear anything else about it, I'm working on coming to Georgia.
Well, I'm gonna save a space for you, Brother Glenn. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Well,
I will be down in the end of August, but I'm going to Florida. But I'll be there for a few days. I'll come by while I'm down there.
Well, on the 30th, on the land, we're having an overnight camp out.
Oh man!
Labor Day. So if you're
30th, that's on that Sunday.
That's Saturday. Is that Saturday?
Saturday.
Mm-hmm. So if you're here, definitely love you to come check that out.
All right. Yeah.
Yes.
Brother Carson, how you doing?
Hey, Brother Carson, how's it going?
All right, my auto tip to everyone. I got on the mess a little bit late, but I did catch some of the introduction with the two opposing issues. But from a standpoint of what's going on now in 2025, you mentioned something about, and I'm not going to even get on the religious thing because you're not going to make too much progress with churches. They just the concept of churches is just they're not gonna budge too much. But the Black Achievement Fund, you said we don't really have any leadership that's focusing on Pan-Africanism and economic development. But we do now. We got the Black Achievement Fund.
That's right. We're here to fill that space. You know what I mean? We're here to do that.
Yeah, and so hey, I saw. What's up, man? I'm encouraged.
Bye.
Bye.
He want to give you a high five.
High five. Say I'm encouraged. This group and you have to be commended on your leadership in leading us to this point.
Thank you so much.
We have a long way to go, but we're going to get there. I really believe that the Black Achievement Fund is the answer to a whole lot of questions. Mm-hmm. So let's just keep the faith, stay encouraged, and keep on moving on. I came to Atlanta the other day.
Oh, you did?
I had to change flights. I had to come in from Indiana. You know, I stay on the flight.
Gotcha. Well, as always, brother, we welcome you here anytime. I thank you for all your encouragement. And we are doing some great work. We are leading by example. We are leading through action and not just words. And I'm just super excited because I know that once we accomplish this one community, that it's going to spark the movement that we're all working so hard to bring to fruition. So thank you all for all of your support. Please share this video. Please talk about the Black Achievement Fund. We get most of our members through word of mouth. So even if someone doesn't join right then and there, stay at it because eventually they will. All right? I have to get off of here now. But thank you guys so much for all of the love and for showing up and learning about this. Please share this with someone else that you know. And we will see you all very, very soon. Peace. Black Achievement Fund Hub.
Black Achievement Hug.